Hey guys, welcome back to the WODdoc Project 365, episode 301. I brought in today my soon-to-be colleague, Carlos. He was shadowing me around for the day. I'm not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but happy to have him. And we happen to talk about some things that were going on with him. He's talking about some shoulder pain, and it just so happened that at the same time, I've been getting requests to talk about flossing of the shoulder. So he was kind enough to stop in, or jump in on today's episode, and he's going to help me out, be my lab rat for today. So the way that we like to approach flossing with the shoulder is, of course, we're going to floss just like anybody else would by surrounding and encompassing the shoulder, but I really like to mobilize in all three planes of motion. And when we talk about those three planes of motion, we're going to talk about first the sagittal plane. This is the one that seems to be lost the most, right? Or we'll do this with you actually. The sagittal plane, this one seems to be one that's lost the most. When we're looking at this, we're thinking about cutting the body in half like such. Then we're going to talk about the frontal plane, which is going to be the motion that goes this way. Instead, his palm is going to be upwards, right? When we think about that, we'll be cutting him in half this way. And then finally, we'll talk about the transverse plane. And that's going to be the plane at which we rotate through, okay? So we think about cutting him in half like a salami. Now, the idea behind this is that we need to have full mobility in all three of those simple planes to do a complex plane motion, right? So when we talked about this, we talked about we were having trouble or pain, maybe even some impingement as we went up and overhead. So the first thing that we looked at that first plane of motion. And of course, there was some loss in that. So we're talking about flossing it, seeing if we can increase some of those ranges of motion. What we're going to have Carlos do is get naked on the show. So jump down there on one knee. You can get naked at the same time. He's multi-talented. Okay, so what we're going to do, and the way that we're going to set this up, is we're going to start about mid-bicep here, maybe a little bit above, okay? The floss is going to go around, the mobility floss will go around, and what we're going to first do is just lap it around to get it caught. Once we do that, we can start applying some pressure. And what we want to do is we kind of just have some torque on the back, but most of the pressure is going to be applied towards the front. And you'll be able to see that we kind of build tension towards the front, and we still are just going to wrap around halfway. As we get on top, or as we get closer to the more medial part of his shoulder, you're going to have to probably wrap about 3/4. Oh, that's okay. Probably wrap about 3/4. Ideally, you wouldn't let this unravel like I did. But you still want to be able to work it up as high as you can into the armpit, sacrificing every bit of armpit hair he has. It's all right, he can make it up in his chest. So once we get this around, and this is the reason why I told you guys before that this is a hard one to do by yourself, because it's really hard to wrap this high into your armpit by yourself. You can get away with elbows, knees, and ankles, but it's really hard to do yourself. We're just going to switch you just a little bit so we're kind of close like that. Good. So remember I said the first one we want to do is the frontal plane. So we're going to have Carlos do is we're going to have him bring his palm so that it matches towards the, like if he's going to pray, so to speak, right, like this. And now all he's going to do is he's going to lift and reach the whole time coming up as far as he can. If you have a buddy here that helps you wrap yourself up, you're welcome to stay here and assist that motion. All you're going to do is add a little bit of a press into that passive range of motion as far as you can go, okay? What are we going to do? How many are we going to do? We're going to do about 20 to 30 of these in each plane, right? So once we get right there, we would repeat this until we got 30. When we come over and we're going to start now into the frontal plane, what we're looking at doing is having him bring his palm up, okay? He can start with it down like this, that's fine, but we want to have the palm up and raise up like it's going to touch the midline of the body above his head, right? And again, if you have a buddy there and they're helping you out, just have him give you a little bit of a passive overpressure. If you don't, bring it up yourself, right? So go ahead and you can kind of pull up over. Good. So again, we're going to do 20 to 30 of these. Finally, we're going to talk about that rotation aspect. And that's where we're trying to show basically our armpits, right? And this relates really, really well over into the lifting world because we go up and over top of our head. We want that closed, packed shoulder position where we can really come back and down and really stack those bony structures on top of each other for the best support, right? But what tends to happen is we tend to cheat into that internal rotation. That's where we get the soft elbows and the missed lifts, right? So what we want to do here is all we want to do is with the floss applied is really start to wind this up, and you'll be able to see this starts to mobilize this anterior pec region right here, right? So again, you could just have your super buddy come in here like this, and all we're going to do is bring that back into that little bit of passive overpressure. You know you're doing too much is if you pull him back so hard that he can't breathe, right? We don't want to do anything like that. We just want to help add a little bit of pressure. After that, of course, the test retest is always the money, right? So we have him bring himself back over into an overhead position, bring that back up, see how that is, okay? Now again, this wasn't a full treatment, so if it was, we do a full retest, or we do a full test and retest. But I wanted to make sure that you guys understood that when we treat the shoulder, what we're doing is we're applying the mobility floss as high up into the armpit as we can, encompassing as much as the anterior shoulder as we can, and we're mobilizing 20 to 30 times in all 3 planes of motion, okay? Carlos, you were a champ.
Thank you.
Appreciate it so much. Guys, until next time, we're optimizing function to optimize performance.